We're now going to discuss historic Africa. As I mentioned previously, the way that I've set up the course is to speak about historic objects first, then move into a discussion of colonialism, if it's necessary. Here it will be. And then finally talk about contemporary objects. So that's always going to be the structure that you see as you move along through the material. And typically what I do is pick out some key points of discussion, because as I had mentioned in the introductory discussion, there's really no way to go through each region of Africa and talk about each object. So the best way to try to organize a survey course like this is to pick out a couple key points of discussion and then talk about those objects that exist, again, around those key points of discussion. So in the case of historical African objects, I picked out the key points of celebration and ritual and divination and magic. Because I think that these sort of subjects get at the sort of totality of the objects that I see here, and I think they're a lot of fun to talk about. Who doesn't love divination and magic, right? So again, these key points will govern our discussion. So the first one we'll talk about is celebration and ritual. Because as I noted in the introductory discussion, for Africans, art is life and life is art. They don't often see a separation between those two notions. They really see that their art complements their life. So looking at some kind of ritual helps us understand how interwoven art is into their culture. And I showed you this photograph of the Gelede before and said we'd speak a little bit more in depth about the actual ritual itself. And I gave you a quote here: "Those who have seen the Gelede have seen the ultimate spectacle." So it is a ritual, right, that occurs in the Yoruban culture that, basically people say, if you've seen this, wow, you've really seen something exciting and amazing. And so I brought a couple pictures, right, of different things that you'd see during the Gelede. Now, what is it as a ritual? It's a ritual that celebrates the women of the tribe, the women of the village, essentially, and the contributions they've made to that community. So a lot of the headdresses you see, a lot of the fabrics you see, these are things that either honor women, right, look like women, were made by women, etc. And all of the celebration that goes along with this, the dancing, the singing, etc., again, complements the actual objects as well. And note that we're seeing here art that's alive. It's not in a museum. It hasn't been sterilized in that sense. We're seeing art that's really vibrant and living in its community. And this is why I think when you see things in a museum, they're sort of leached from their context, right? Their energy is kind of leached out of them. And you don't get the same sort of sense of their vibrancy, their purpose, their utility, as you do seeing photographs like this. The Gelede, it celebrates these women. It celebrates this idea of what women bring to this community, what women do to sort of prop up their community, right, support their community, and the community, in a sense, shows up to celebrate them. The rituals that you're seeing here often happen in the town square, in a place where commerce occurs, because often the women would make things that were bought and sold, right, in their community to raise funds. So they kind of use the idea of the marketplace, the town center, as a place to locate, right, this ritual and have people sort of gather around, right, to take part in it. You also can look at something like these Kanaga dancers from Dogon in the area of Mali. Now remember I said we'd jump around a little bit to different geographical places, so again, I'm speaking more of these objects conceptually, following our key points rather than sticking to one tribe or one group. So you'll see a lot of different variety in the things that we talk about and look at here in the class. And you'll note, again, we're looking at a shot of the actual ritual taking place. We're getting a sense of the actual feeling of life, right, in the ritual, rather than seeing it as something separated, right, from life. But, I wanted to tell you a little bit about these masks that are being worn here and what they represent. And again, I think it's sort of complicated, so, this is a slide where I put a little bit of text on here because I think it helps you with note-taking and thinking about the sort of more complex aspects of these kind of masks. or headdresses, as we probably call this here, sort of a mask slash headdress. But this is what's part of the Dhamma ritual, and it transports the souls of the deceased. And in a sense, it enhances the prestige of the dead as well. And when you think about rituals, there's different reasons why you perform them. With the Gelede, it's about celebrating like the contributions of women. Here, it's about death. You might also see rituals celebrating fertility. So there's different reasons why you would make a ritual and make objects to complement that ritual. And here, it's about trying to ease the dead, right, into their new realm, right, and to enhance the prestige of the deceased as well. The shape is very significant. Notice the cross shape. It's thought to represent the idea of a bird or a god in the sky and the earth below. This idea of the top bar representing God, right, or gods, because often African tribes were polytheistic, had multiple gods, and the idea of the earth below, creating a sense of what we call cosmography or a cosmological diagram. When we go and look at the Mayans, I'll bring up this idea of cosmography again, or cosmology, and this idea of kind of creating graphs of the world, or sort of images of the world on a more simplified plane, more symbolic plane. So we can kind of read it through that idea as well. Now, when I think about these masks and I talk about them, I'm always surprised about, like, often these masks are really unwieldy, they're really large, they're really heavy, and the kind of physicality it would take to actually wear them and perform these dances and such with these masks right on your head. Which leads me to my favorite one, my favorite headdress, which is the Chiwara, which is related to Malian culture again, but deals with farming. Now, there's a lot of different headdresses that you can see in various different tribal cultures in Africa, usually in agricultural cultures, that represent different animals that they believe sort of link up to farming. The Chiwara actually deals with the antelope, so you'll notice the horns that look like antelope horns, but it also is an amalgamation of the anteater. So the antelope and the anteater together, right, in this sort of stylized headdress. I like the image of the people wearing the headdress because, again, you can think about how it took a certain kind of balance and grace to wear these things and to be able to perform in them. It wouldn't be a simple task by any stretch of the imagination to wear these things and sort of move around with them on without becoming unwieldy in a sense. So I love the Chiwara. I think it's a really great example of headdresses that are linked to certain rituals. And the farming rituals that they do, they would often replicate the movements of animals. So in the case of the antelope, they might prance about. There's a different ritual that involved hippos, and the people would kind of create these muddy tracks filled with water, and then they would charge at each other right through the muddy tracks of water. Because hippos, if you know anything about hippos, are not nice animals, right? They're actually very dangerous. So they would charge at each other wearing these hippo masks right through the water and through the mud. And so, again, it often is quite theatrical in how it's done. And I also want to show you these Igbo Mabari houses that are linked to rituals as well. They're built, in a sense, to honor, right, the different goddesses of the people. In this case, the goddess Ala, which is the earth goddess and of the Igbo people. And were thought to create good luck, right, for the people who were using them. They were a very long process to build. Again, about 2 years typically to build. You notice the artists went through a very long training process before they were, in a sense, considered cleared to have the skills to build something like this. Often in a lot of non-Western cultures, you'll note this, that there's often like sort of a chronology of like how long it takes to build something. We'll look at this with like Shinto temples. The artists often have to spend so much time apprenticing or studying in order to be qualified, right, to be an artisan creating an object. So there's a lot of use of numerology of, okay, you do this for 5 years, then we consider it like you're ready to go. Notice that you had to build 15 houses before you're considered a master Mabari house builder. Now, what goes on with these is that they create these little figures that, in a sense, were thought to protect the communities around them. Early on, you'd have things like hunters and such. Today, you'd have something like a policeman. So over time, the Babari houses have changed, right, to use the social structure of the village as it now exists. So where hunting may have been very, very important in early tribal cultures, right, policing or protecting might be something that's more important in contemporary villages today. And these are ephemeral pieces, so I mentioned ephemerality in the introductory talk. That means that this is not meant to last. The house is built and then is allowed to deteriorate, basically using nature as its guide. So it would break down over time, it would fall to entropy, it would fall away. I bring this up because, again, it's a very different thought than Westerners have towards art. Westerners, we believe you should protect art, you should conserve it. The thought of making something and then just letting it die, yeah, I don't think Westerners are really okay with that. We find that to be an odd position. So these are very much meant to be ephemeral objects. Next, we'll talk about magic and divination.